Boarding School Murder Mystery, Part 2. Previously on Boarding School Murder Mystery, 13-year-old Gwen left Mississippi for her new life at a prestigious Canadian boarding school, and her first real adventure away from home. At the crumbling Memphis station, surrounded by night wanderers, flickering lights, and the ghosts of bad coffee, she said goodbye to her father, who was beaming with pride and trying not to show how worried he was. The City of New Orleans train wasn't exactly glamorous, but it was the start of something big. With a backpack, a ticket, and a heart full of nerves, Gwen climbed aboard, completely unaware that this journey north would change everything. Chapter 2, All Aboard for Adventure, by Glory Fink. The trip from Memphis to Chicago on the City of New Orleans train felt like traveling inside a time machine that hadn't been cleaned since 1953. My tiny sleeper car was about the size of my middle school desk and locker area combined, and that was including the bathroom. Grandma had paid an extra $200 so I could have my own toilet. What a luxury! Except, it turned out the toilet literally flushed onto the train tracks below. It was a breezy experience just to pee, if you catch my drift. There was even a sign saying not to put toilet tissue in the toilet because that would mean littering across half of America. So they gave me a little brown paper bag for my used toilet paper. Gag. I decided I'd rather just hold it until Chicago. It was my first time traveling this far alone. Every bump of the train made my stomach wobble a little. Grandma always said adventure builds character, but I was starting to think character might be overrated. Still, when I peeked out the window at the sunset turning the tracks gold, it felt like the whole world was rolling out just for me. Fields blurred by in a shimmer of heat and light, and for a moment I forgot to miss home. Somewhere out there, adventure was waiting. And maybe even my new life. The Chicago train terminal was huge and loud and packed. It felt like walking through the Mississippi State Fair, but indoors and 10 times smellier. Cars and trucks were pumping out diesel exhaust everywhere. Honestly, I would have taken horse and cow farts any day of the week. At one point, I took a wrong turn and almost walked right out of the station instead of finding my connecting train. I was near tears when an angel in a red cap appeared, Mr. Roscoe, station porter extraordinaire. He took one look at me, sighed like a man on a mission, and hustled my luggage cart all the way across the terminal in under 20 minutes. He even called to his coworker Bill, who radioed my train to tell them to wait for me. By the time we made it, 5 redcaps were literally jogging beside me, shouting for the conductor to hold the doors. They all loaded my bags onto the train at once. Mr. Roscoe tried to refuse the $20 tip I pressed into his hand, but I told him, "Then help a single mom or a kid who doesn't have tip money. Consider that your rent bonus." He smiled and said, "Yes, ma'am." I teared up right then and there. Once I finally sat down in my new sleeper car, I wrote a thank you letter to the head of the Chicago Amtrak station. They deserved to know their redcaps, and especially Mr. Roscoe, had turned my near disaster into a story worth remembering. That night in the dining car, meals were included with the sleeper ticket. Ooh la la! I met a passenger named Eric Nordell, who worked for a Scandinavian pharmaceutical company. He said he'd always wanted to see the American prairies, so I told him all about my Little House on the Prairie obsession and all the Victorian medicine research that came with it. The next day, as we rolled through the Great Plains, we actually saw a herd of antelope running alongside the train. Later, when the train stopped, I even spotted a few prairie dogs popping up like fuzzy whack-a-moles. I told Eric everything I remembered from watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. He was polite enough to act impressed. Across the aisle, a lady 2 cabins down kept her door locked, even while she was inside. Her suitcase was covered in school stickers, and one said Whisperen. I almost said hi, but she looked too nervous to talk. Maybe she was a teacher? Or probably just a teacher. Probably. At another meal, I met Linda and her 15-year-old son, Rick, who were on a mother-son adventure. Rick was the youngest of 3 boys and the shortest. He said both of his brothers were over 6 feet tall, while he was only 5'8". I told him that was still plenty tall where I was from in Mississippi, and 15 was way too early to be worrying about height anyway. I said, "If you haven't started growing by 17, then see a specialist. Until then, get plenty of sleep." I could actually see his shoulders relax. Then I launched into a story about Victorian medicine and rickets because, of course I did. Linda laughed so hard she nearly spilled her sweet tea. Diary, I promise to update you again once I reach Seattle and meet my host family from Whisperen Academy. Kate, the mom, told my mom that the ferry strike should be over by the time I arrive. She said Whisperen Academy is on Vancouver Island, and not just any island, but one with fog, a temperate rainforest, and maybe even ghosts. Okay, probably not ghosts, but if there were ghosts, I bet they wore plaid blazers. Fingers crossed, and maybe toes too. Love from the rails, Gwen. Coming soon in Chapter 3, Goodbye America, Hello Canada, Gwen learns that adventure tastes a lot like cold ferry snacks and missed dinners, stranded in customs limbo, then dropped into a dorm room full of strangers. She's about to discover that new beginnings don't always start with a warm welcome or a full stomach. Thanks for tagging along with Chapter 2. From questionable train toilets to unexpected heroes in red caps, this chapter was one wild ride, and we're just getting started. The journey doesn't stop here. Listen to Gwen's Adventures and Sadie Cohen Bounty Hunter wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and beyond. If you laughed, cringed, or felt for Gwen along the rails, you could tap the heart button, drop a comment. She loves swapping travel tales. Toss a few coins in the snack fund, no paper bag required, on Ko-fi, Venmo, and Cash App. Every bit of encouragement keeps indie storytelling alive and rolling toward new horizons. Hop aboard for future chapters at Glorious Magazine. https://glorythink.substack.com. Stay connected with the Coffee Bunny Crafters Cafe. Subscribe for cozy chaos, creative magic, and behind-the-scenes updates at coffeebunny.substack.com. You can also find me, Glory Think, here on social media: Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and TikTok. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.